In a lush tropical forest, not far from a quiet village, there stood two trees side by side, a tall, slender coconut tree and a wide, leafy mango tree. They had grown together since they were saplings, rooted in the same soil, bathed by the same rain, and warmed by the same sun. Yet over the years, their paths had grown apart, not in distance, but in self-worth. The coconut tree stood tall, almost regal, its trunk long and proud, its crown high above the forest floor. It loved the way it reached the sky, how travelers stopped to admire its height, how its fruit was carried across oceans. But the mango tree often looked at the coconut tree with envy. Its own branches were thick and crooked, its fruits heavy and scattered. People came to sit in its shade, to pluck its fruit, to rest beneath its arms. And yet, the mango tree whispered to itself, "I wish I was tall like him." It didn't see the beauty in what it gave, it only saw what it lacked. One day, as the wind moved through the forest, a storm began to brew. Dark clouds gathered, rain poured, and fierce winds swept through the trees. The mango tree held strong, its branches bending but not breaking, its roots gripping the earth. The coconut tree, standing tall and unbending, took the full force of the wind. A loud crack echoed through the forest, and one of its fronds snapped, crashing to the ground. When the storm passed, the forest fell silent. The coconut tree looked at the mango and said softly, "I always admired how much you give, the shade, the fruit, the comfort, and yet I always tried to stand taller, thinking that would make me more." The mango tree, surprised, replied, "But I've spent years wishing I was like you, reaching higher, standing prouder." They paused, the silence between them deeper than words. And then, in the aftermath of the storm, both trees realized the truth. They were never meant to be the same. In the calm after the storm, as sunlight filtered through the wet leaves, the mango and coconut trees stood quietly, each lost in thought. The air was thick with a sense of realization, as if the forest itself had whispered a truth both trees had long ignored. The mango tree finally broke the silence. "All this time," it said gently, "I thought being useful meant standing tall like you, being admired from a distance, seen as something great. But when people sit under me, when children climb my branches, when they bite into my fruit and smile, I never saw that as enough." The coconut tree lowered its crown, a frond still missing. "And I," it replied, "believed that standing tall was all that mattered, that if I reached higher than everyone else, I would feel more valuable. But in the storm I realized I was exposed, alone up there, and yet you bent, but you didn't break." They both stood in reflection, their roots quietly intertwined beneath the soil, the way they had always been. It was then that the forest spoke, not with words, but with a soft breeze, a gentle rustle through the trees, as if nature itself was nodding in agreement. Every tree in the forest was different. Some bore fruit, some reached the sky, some gave shade, some simply stood beautiful in their stillness. But none of them tried to be like the other, and that was the lesson. The mango tree didn't need to grow tall to be worthy. Its worth was in the sweetness it gave, the shelter it provided, the joy it brought. The coconut tree didn't need to envy the mango's abundance. Its strength, its resilience, its ability to thrive in the harshest of conditions, that was its gift. Neither tree was better, neither was lesser. They were simply themselves. Days passed and the forest began to flourish once again. New leaves sprouted, birds returned to their nests, and the sky cleared. But something had changed between the mango and coconut trees, not in their shape or stature, but in how they saw each other, and more importantly, how they saw themselves. They no longer looked with envy, they looked with respect. Each had something the other didn't. And that was no longer a cause for comparison, it was a reason for appreciation. One afternoon, a young boy wandered into the forest. He ran to the mango tree, picked a ripe fruit, and sat in its shade to eat. Then he walked to the coconut tree, pointed upward, and smiled as one of the villagers climbed up to retrieve a fresh coconut. In that single moment, both trees gave something the boy needed, comfort and nourishment, and neither tried to do what the other did. They simply stood in their truth, offering their gifts to the world. And maybe you, the one listening now, have felt like the mango tree, wishing you were taller, louder, more like someone else. Or maybe you felt like the coconut tree, trying to stand higher to be seen, while forgetting your own unique strength. But here's the truth. You were never meant to be a copy of anyone else. Your story, your shape, your path, it's yours for a reason. And if this story touched something in you, if you've ever doubted your own worth because someone else looked better or further ahead, know this: you don't need to compete, you just need to root deeper into who you are. This channel is about finding strength not by becoming someone else, but by becoming fully yourself. So if that's the journey you're on, consider subscribing, not for more noise, but for more clarity, more stories like this, more reminders that your worth isn't in comparison, it's in being you. As the seasons changed, the forest remained a place of quiet harmony. The mango and coconut trees continued to grow side by side, no longer measuring their worth against each other. They had stopped asking who was more and started recognizing what they each gave. The mango tree no longer envied the sky. It looked down, where people gathered in its shade, where laughter echoed beneath its branches, where sticky fingers reached for sweet fruit. And it felt proud, not for being like the coconut tree, but for being exactly what it was meant to be. The coconut tree in turn no longer stretched itself taller to outshine its neighbor. It stood firm, its roots deep and strong, knowing that in the harshest winds and the driest days, it had something only it could offer: endurance, sustenance, shelter. And together they stood, not in rivalry, but in reverence. Across the forest, other trees began to take notice. The banana trees, the jackfruit, the neem, all different, all vital. Slowly, without anyone saying a word, the forest began to breathe in a new rhythm, one of acceptance. A silent understanding grew among them. We are not meant to be the same. We are meant to be whole. And maybe this is where the story meets your story. Maybe you've spent years looking sideways, measuring your success by someone else's pace, your beauty by someone else's shape, your path by someone else's direction. But the forest doesn't compare its trees. It lets each one bloom in its own time. And you're allowed to do the same. You don't need to run anyone else's race. You don't need to prove your worth by matching someone else's steps. You just need to root deep and grow. Over time, word of the forest began to spread. Travelers who passed through noticed something different, something they couldn't quite name. It wasn't just the beauty of the place or the fruit or the shade. It was the feeling, the peace, the acceptance. They felt it in the stillness of the mango tree, wide and welcoming. They saw it in the strength of the coconut tree, tall and steady. And they carried that feeling with them, back to cities, villages, and homes where people were still trying to figure out who they were. The story of the mango and coconut tree became more than a forest tale. It became a mirror. People began to reflect. What part of me have I silenced just because it didn't look like someone else's success? What have I judged in myself just because it didn't match someone else's timeline? And slowly, change began, not in big declarations, but in quiet choices. Someone chose to stop hiding their gift, even if it wasn't loud. Someone else chose to stop chasing a dream that wasn't theirs to begin with. Someone let go of envy. Someone stopped comparing. Someone began to bloom. And in that blooming, they rediscovered the truth. You don't need to look like anyone else to matter. You don't need to be taller, faster, richer, louder. You just need to be deeply, unapologetically yourself. That was what the forest knew. That was what the trees had learned. And that is what now echoed in the hearts of those who heard their story. One quiet morning, as the golden light filtered through the leaves, the mango tree looked up and saw the coconut tree gently swaying in the breeze. The two trees, different in every way, now stood in harmony, not just with each other, but within themselves. And maybe that's the real story, not about trees, but about you, about the parts of yourself you've questioned, compared, doubted, simply because they didn't look like someone else's highlight reel. But what if your quietness was your strength? What if your curve was your courage? What if your roots, deep, unseen, were the very reason you'll withstand the storms ahead? You don't need to match anyone else's pace. You don't need to rise to their height. You only need to become what you were planted to be. And like the mango tree, you will bear fruit in your season. Like the coconut tree, you will stand strong in your own way. Because the world doesn't need another version of someone else. It needs the full version of you. So next time the voice of comparison whispers, "You're not enough," let the trees remind you were never supposed to be like them. You were supposed to be like you. And that is more than enough. The end.